Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the executive head of state of the world's largest democracy, India, is famous for many things. But oddly enough, his hugs are among that number. He has this penchant for hugging world leaders, from Vladimir Putin to Donald Trump to Angela Merkel, as soon as he sees them, and the bear hugs of this short, balding man have become something of a meme in Indian political circles. Modi hugs are a topic of talk show discussion, discussion about the sovereignty of India, and discussion about the obsequiousness of Indian leaders to Western leaders traditionally. It's taken on a lot of symbolic significance in the country, but it's perhaps the best parable to Modi's style of politics. It's very authentic, very in your face, and attempts to disarm you with repeated populist gestures towards you before actually getting its point across. Modi hugs are somewhat symbolic of Modi as a man, and that's increasingly important in understanding the fate and role of Indian politics. Obviously, the issue dominating Indian politics, as I'm sure you've seen in the news, is the deadly COVID outbreak ravaging the country, worse than any country, period, throughout the pandemic. And as it comes near a wave of vaccinations in more developed, wealthier countries, Modi seems to be scrambling, as does the entire Indian government, for answers to a pandemic that is ravishing the country. All of which begs the question, more politically, can Prime Minister Modi pull off re-election following his admittedly poor handling of the COVID pandemic in India? And the answer is no. Modi's pulled off many political miracles in his long political lifetime, but everyone runs out of luck, and COVID is the end of the livelihood of the old man from Gujarat. This is for three main reasons. First, Modi has no real enemy to hit at or even to point at, and that is an uncommon experience for him. His politics is largely built around fear-mongering about various groups, be they Muslims within India, Pakistan, or the West. Second, COVID has taken out politicians very similar to Modi, perhaps most prominently our very own Donald Trump, and his brand of populism appears specifically susceptible to domestic crises that the politicians themselves can't contain. Third, and perhaps most importantly, India's recovery looks a long way off, both in terms of medicine and economics, easily after the re-election campaign. So Modi's re-election efforts, in turn, feel very uniquely doomed. But first, Modi has no real enemy to hit at or even really vaguely gesture at, as the BBC on March 18th reported, quote, "Is Modi's Pakistan rhetoric falling flat?" This is at the beginning of the wave of COVID that is ravishing India currently, after Modi gave a very lengthy press conference on the existential danger of the Pakistani state to the sovereignty of India. This is a common topic in both Indian and Pakistani politics, but as COVID has hit, voters seem generally less interested in their country's national security and the potential for invasion by their neighbors than they do in the direct ailments that are plaguing their communities. And Modi doesn't really seem to have an answer for that. Ever since he was state governor of the state of Gujarat in India's west, he's generally been gesturing towards either Pakistan or Muslims within India. His party, the BJP, is famously Hindu nationalist. And he doesn't really seem to have an answer for a virus that has no face, no discernible fear-mongering group, and no ability for Modi to drum up support behind. The Washington Post on April 23rd, in the middle of the wave, reported on on the same troubling problem from Modi's re-election efforts. Quote, "As COVID surges, Modi struggles for new tricks." And that's true. Modi's largely been able to pull the same thing throughout his long career in Indian politics, but it seems to have run out in the face of COVID, a virus that he can't simply point to and declare that he alone will defeat. This is a serious problem for a populist strongman leader such as Modi, but it's perhaps made worse by his second main issue, which is that COVID has taken out politicians eerily similar to Modi, from Marine Le Pen in France to Donald Trump in Germany, and Viktor Orban in Hungary seems next. Politico on February 19th reports that, quote, "Global populism fractures and retreats in Trump's absence." This is after Biden was sworn in, and it's highly important to recognize that COVID, again, a virus which populists can't drum up much support behind fear-mongering, has been highly devastating to the movement's champion, Donald Trump. After he was removed from office, the movement became less united, more fractious, and more disparate in its talking points, more truly nationalistic and isolationist. Modi has suffered from a lot of the brunt of that energy, and without Donald Trump, he finds himself without a valuable ally. As the New York Times on January 26th reports, quote, COVID ousted Trump. Could it have a similar effect elsewhere? And in India, it almost certainly will. Modi has no answer to COVID, and the troubling trend in his mind of politicians very similar to him across the globe being taken out by the virus It seems that the trend of populists across the globe rising instead of falling seems to be perhaps reversed by COVID. And if Modi falls, it will be a serious uh, uh, blow to the movement. But perhaps third and most importantly, India's recovery, both economically and medicinally, looks a long way off. The Times of India on April 22nd reported, quote, vaccines relief a long way off in India, according to government officials. That's entirely true. India doesn't have enough vaccines, a good enough way to distribute them, and even with an inpouring of international supplies from the EU, the US, and other sources, India is still struggling to get the vaccines to its gigantic, largely dense, and very poor population generally. They've gone to highly innovative and creative lengths, such as employing taxi drivers and trains to take people to clinics and vaccines, but it's simply not working fast enough. And in a country of more than 1 billion people, vaccine relief does seem a long way off. The Economist on April 20th reported on something similar, quote, as India reels, hospitals threaten to buckle. And that's true. Without supplies such as oxygen tanks, vaccines, antibodies, and other treatment methods, hospitals in India are overwhelmed and understaffed. They're threatening to shut down. The Golden Jaipur Hospital, the largest in the capital city of Delhi, threatened to, quote, buckle last weekend after they were hit with a new wave of infections, nearly 300,000 in one night across the country, that they were simply incapable of dealing with. They don't have enough rooms, enough nurses, or enough supplies to battle off the outbreak. There is no help coming, said one woman interviewed by National Geographic this April. Her entire family is infected, and with no supplies coming, no medical relief, and all of the nurses overstaffed in hospitals, all she can do is, quote, pray. Modi is facing a serious political, medicinal, and public health crisis in India, and one, without a real enemy to hit at or even point at, two, with a troubling trend of politicians similar to Modi being taken out, and three, with India's recovery looking a long way off. Modi can't hug his way out of this one, no matter how hard he tries.